Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. I'm Lindsay Faria, Director of Partner Marketing here at Intronus MSP Solutions, and I'm delighted to be here to welcome you and to facilitate today's session, which will be focusing on a very timely topic, cybersecurity. This is likely top of mind with many of you and your customers this week following the widespread outbreak of WannaCry last week, and we look forward to having a great conversation today and hopefully giving you some valuable information that you can go use going forward with your customers. Before we kick things off, let's do some brief housekeeping. During the webinar, if you have questions, feel free to ask them using the questions panel to the right of the GoToWebinar screen. And at the conclusion of the webinar, you'll be prompted to complete a brief survey. Please take a moment to tell us what you think of today's session and also to give us suggestions on other topics you want to hear about so that we can continually improve the content and the quality of these online events. I'm joined here today by Mike Parkin, who's a security technologist out of Barracuda Network's headquarters out in California and is more than 2 decades of experience in the information technology industry. He has more than 20 years experience in security, including security operations, former penetration tester for the Federal Reserve, and been spending time designing secure networks for customers, so lots of breadth there. And also, Neil Bradbury will be kicking us off. Many of you may be familiar with Neil. He's co-founder and Senior Director of Business Development at Intronus MSP Solutions. He's also a 5-time CRN Channel Chief and Vice Chair of the CompTIA IT Security Community. Thank you, Mike and Neil, for joining us today. All right, so let's just run through a quick agenda so that you all know what you're in for. Neil will be getting us started with an introduction and launching us into an industry landscape, and then Mike will be taking us through more about WannaCry, the anatomy of an attack, and what it looks like from the inside, and then we'll wrap up with how you can use this as an opportunity to have valuable and important conversations with your customers. With this said, I will hand it over to Neil.
Thanks, Lindsay. Thanks for having me here today. It's actually a pleasure to be here, and I know that this is expensive time for everyone on the line, so we truly do appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to join us. I'm sure it's, yes, to learn more about Barracuda, but then also with WannaCry being so widespread, it's no surprise that we're here. Whether you're a part of the Intronus MSP Solutions or whether you're with Barracuda, the sheer amount of inbound requests and information and traffic that we're getting over the last 7 days has been huge. So we want to take kind of what we've been receiving from prospects and partners and customers alike and share that information, and I'm excited for what Mike's going to talk about. But let me set the stage a little bit, and you have some data in front of you from a survey that we did. So we all recognize that ransomware is a predominant threat and it's growing. In a survey that we did in December and January of over 500 IT service providers, more than half of them told us that ransomware was the biggest IT security threat that their customers are commenting on, which is huge. It ranks significantly higher than any other threat. You could argue that user error is kind of in there with ransomware because the user's got to click to kind of cause the ransomware to happen. But this shouldn't be any surprise. The attention and the media attention that we're seeing from WannaCry is really what's causing a lot of this inbound traffic, but it's not like this is the first time this has happened. And really the message as I go through some of these slides that we should be talking about is how next week or the week after, when maybe the media has changed, do you keep kind of the ransomware and making sure that we're protecting the small businesses that we all serve top of mind. So with that, to make sure everyone is paying attention on the webinar, I know we sometimes get put to the secondary monitor, we're going to do a poll question. And I can't wait, so let's see. Talk about how many of you are actually having conversations with your prospects. So now, of course, I can cheat and see the results, but if you'll look into your GoToWebinar console, you'll be able to select one of these options. So I'll read the question for you. Are you currently having conversations with your customers and prospects about ransomware threats like WannaCry? Yes, I'm proactively having these conversations. Yes, but only after maybe a security incident or something else has happened. Or not currently, but you have plans to do so. So Lindsay, what do you think the option is going to be? You got to pick here on what's going to be number one?
Well, Neil, I've done some research on this, so I don't feel that it's fair to make a prediction, but I'm going to say I'm hoping that it's largely proactive.
You're looking at the results, because I'm looking at the results today. So Sarah, why don't we go, and Sarah's helping us here today, why don't you go and publish those results for us? And so, wow, and when I get to the next slide, don't go there yet, but when I get to the next slide, this does not jive at all, by the way, with the next slide, but 85% are saying, yes, I'm proactively having conversations, which is awesome, by the way. Yes, but only after an incident. So there's 15% here that can be a little bit more proactive, and then 4% are planning to. And stay tuned to the end of the webinar, because if you're in that 4%, Lindsay's got some great tips and tricks that she can share with us on how to actually do that. So let's go to the next slide here. And what we'd like to share is, based on a CompTIA security in the IT channel research study that was conducted, actually 51% of channel firms say that they initiate security discussions with their customers, which tracks well with kind of the 44% of customers that are assessed at having less than this is rough. I'm just going to say it like this. 51% of service providers initiate those discussions, which really doesn't jive with the 85% on the last slide, but I'm actually really glad that it's 85%. That is awesome. The other part of it is having those conversations will raise the level of urgency, right? So based on the CompTIA security study, which if you're not a member of CompTIA, it's a great place if you're in the channel for different types of information regarding the channel and different types of things that your customers may be worried about. 44% of the customers do not feel the urgency. Now, I hope that they're all feeling the urgency this week, and really the message and the mission for you is how do you keep that urgency top of mind 3 weeks from now or 4 weeks from now, so that they realize that security is actually a huge thing they need to keep top of mind. So this is your wake-up call. I asked the marketing team to make the phone ring. I was denied. But we do have a nice transition. So it's your wake-up call, but it's really your opportunity. And it's your opportunity to kind of take the next step and be more proactive with your customers when it comes to having these conversations about ransomware and security in general. As we look at some of the data also from the study, and I won't read it all, I won't focus on it, these are the different triggers that partners and customers are using to have this conversation. A lot of it is, 68%, 64% on the other side is really if there's just a change in IT operations. And this is okay, but the question is how often do a lot of small businesses networks change? Change requests for certain companies are weekly, other companies it's probably quarterly, which might not be as often as you want. So with that, what I'm going to do is let's hand it off to Mike now. And Mike is going to take us through details on WannaCry, which will probably make you want to cry. Yes, I made that awful joke that my marketing team didn't want me to make, but let's hand it off to Mike and learn more about WannaCry and advanced persistent threats in general. And then we're going to hear from Lindsay, who's got some really, really good marketing tips for us as well. So with that, Mike, are you there?
I am here, Neil. Thanks.
Hey, you got it, Mike. Your show now.
Thank you, sir. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us. As mentioned, I'm an old hand with security. I'm a former penetration tester. I've worked security ops. I'm in development now. And I'm going to go through and talk to you a little bit about how WannaCry is top of mind right now. It was all over the news, and why WannaCry is a little bit different than some of the ransomware we've seen in the past and some of the malware we've seen in the past. So what is WannaCry? WannaCry was first hit on Friday, May 12th, very recently, and it's basically a new malware payload. And what they've done is they have combined some features that are not commonly seen in malware. Most of the ransomware we've seen in the past is a single payload. It gets on its target, infects the target, damages them, and goes from there. WannaCry, wcry, added the ability to traverse as a worm. And that's something that hadn't been seen before. Worms have been around forever. Ransomware has been around for a good 10 years now, one form or another. But this is the first time we've seen it in a way that it's combining things. So you have, once you get the single infection, if you have vulnerable systems, it spreads very rapidly. The tool they used was from the recent NSA leak that was distributed by shadow brokers in early April. And the last count, when the slide was done, it was over 200,000 incidents reported. My last data I saw puts it at over 350,000 in over 100 countries. So it's massive, and it's not just big targets. We saw they talked about it was English Department of National Health, but it's not. They're not the only target. This is affecting everybody. This is, big business, small business. It doesn't matter. It doesn't care. It's indiscriminate. Ransomware in general tends to be very indiscriminate. Where the hit came, what caused this, was that there was a vulnerability in Microsoft Windows that's gone all the way back to Vista. And the patch for this, interestingly enough, was actually released back in March. But the problem is, realistically, not everyone patches every day. Many businesses don't. Many businesses have change management windows, and they've got procedures they got to do before they can release a patch. Some smaller organizations don't have the energy or the dedicated IT infrastructure to manage patching. So it's why there's a lot of patches, unpatched systems out there. Some of the things that were a hit here is that some of the older systems weren't even going to receive the patch, even if they had been. And Microsoft took the unprecedented step of patching this and making the patch available back to XP, Windows 8, Windows 2003 Server, and as far as I know, Vista as well. That's not on the slide. They actually took the step of making sure older users could get it patched so they wouldn't be affected. Now, the method delivery hasn't been fixed yet, or if it has been, it hasn't been released to a point where any of us know about it. Very strong suspicion that it came in through an email. It was either an attached malware or it was a web threat. The web threat, of course, could be somebody randomly surfing the web, or, again, email attacks being what they are. I'll actually talk a little bit more about that later. There may have been a link, right? And the link sent somebody to a site, and the site had the malware and they were infected. The Eternal Blue exploit was the exploit that was used to attack the server message block protocols, which Microsoft had actually already fixed before this was released, but no telling how long the Eternal Blue had actually been existent. It was one of the NSA tools. And what happens is the target system is going to allow the code to execute, and the code triggers the worm. The worm migrates from system to system, installing this on each of the system. And there's a few other things that came on here. They used, the propagation. There's also an endpoint in here that the attackers put on. There's a backdoor that I mentioned that lets them retain access to a user system. Now, traditionally, ransomware in the past is usually the person who's infected is the one they're infected, and they're the only ones. What made this different, again, is that it was able to worm. It was able to propagate on its own. If anybody's wondering what this would look like, it shows you, this is actually a screen grab, you've been encrypted. One of the things that was kind of interesting about this is that it started out with $300 within 3 days, jumped to $600, and then after a week, that was it. Your files were locked forever. Again, that's not that atypical for ransomware. So this part of it, the ransomware part of it, is the kind of things we've seen before and the kind of things we will continue to see and your users will continue to see. And that's what we're here to try to protect them against. So from a prevention standpoint, keep Windows up to date, keep Windows patched. Make sure try to get your user community, make sure they're keeping patched. Keep your own systems patched, keep it up to date. Older systems, either retire them, update them to the latest, or Microsoft has actually made the patches available for this, which is a good thing for anybody who might be affected. It mentions a kill switch. This is really only useful for the first variant because there are already variants in the wild of this. The kill switch was something one of the earlier researchers noticed and said, hey, this, there's a reference to this domain in the code. He registered the domain, and it was suddenly found that the malware checked against that domain, and if it was able to reach the domain, the malware wouldn't propagate. that has been removed from the current versions that are in the wild. So that's no longer, the kill switch is no longer active as far as that goes. So if any of your customers are calling you and say, "Oh my God, we've been hit. What do we do?" It's relatively straightforward. It's the kind of things you deal with when dealing with most kinds of infections. You're going to isolate the system. You're going to remove it. You're going to try to make sure that there's access to DNS in case the kill switch, it is an early variant, it still works with the kill switch. You can stop propagation, right? If you've got internal firewalls, you can stop that from happening. And then a lot of the endpoint protection folks out there already have signatures for this, and we have signatures for this on our end. And the only way to recover from this is from backup, which is a service, as you know, we all offer. Mentioned the backdoor, the double pulsar. It's another one of the NSA tools. It was a rootkit backdoor, and once that's been installed, it can be fairly difficult to remove. If you're offering that service to users, go ahead and remove it for them, help them remove it. So try to get that out of there. Now, one of the things we've seen with this already, polymorphic. When this slide was written a couple days ago, and since the kill switches are, there's already new versions out there. There are probably already new versions have been released since, possibly even since this morning, since we got on this call. New versions, because the whole, the whole malware community, they move very rapidly. It's multiple threat vectors involved. It's a multi-vector attack. This is something I talk about a little bit later in my deck. Not very soon. I'm going to move into that. So this is what you're looking at. So if any of your customers are asking you for more information about WannaCry, this is what you can tell them. And there's a fair amount of active information to be found out there right now, and more information is being made available as analysis completes and we get more understanding of who is behind this whole attack. So enough about WannaCry itself. I talked a fair amount about it. Hopefully everybody's kind of up to speed on that now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover the anatomy of an attack. I'm sure many of you are familiar with what's going on here, but this is information you can help your users understand the kind of threats they're facing in the real world for your customers and yourselves. So I'm talking about multi-vector attacks and how this all goes together. So most attacks start with a reconnaissance. If they're targeted an old conventional style, old style attack where they're attacking a firewall, people aren't doing that anymore. But even if they're going for a phishing attack, email, fake websites, things like that, they're actually going to do a recon to understand their target. And again, not every piece here is going to be involved in each attack. The compromise, this is where you end up with the malware. This is where the malware gets in. How do I had the recon, I figured out how to make the attack, I leverage the attack, I get the compromise on your system, the compromise is now in. This is what, again, this was the payload with WannaCry. Lateral movement is a step where once I'm inside, I now start trying to move around laterally. WannaCry automated this by adding the worm component that once one system was infected, anybody that was vulnerable would also be infected. Malware installation, if I'm a manual attacker, I'm going to try to attack other systems on your site. Again, WannaCry automated this by being a worm and moving automatically through the network. As an attacker, I'm going to obfuscate what I've done. I'm going to hide it so that once I'm inside a target system or a target enterprise, whatever it is, from a small business, 2 or 3 people, up to something much larger, I'm going to hide it so that they don't know that I'm there. That's part of where that back door comes in. And then my goal of having this thing is, right now, generally with ransomware, it's going to be theft. They're direct theft. They steal your money. They encrypt your files. Actually, they ransom your money. They encrypt your files and make you pay to get them back. Or they may be trying to steal data. They may be competitors trying to damage your reputation on your website, etc. So now that I've described that, let me go into what's going on here. This is a hypothetical small business. Behind a firewall, there's a few small user base. They've got a few applications that are running internally. Those applications can be running in the cloud as well. I talk about that a little bit later in this. So the first thing the attacker's going to do is they're going to do a recon. They're going to see what your company is looking like, what your target is looking like. In this case, your customers. What am I going to try to attack? And I can get a lot of information from Facebook and LinkedIn, et cetera. And especially for small businesses, that web presence can be very, very important, very vital to them. You know, they need to have the web presence there so their customers can find them. So what I do is I find an appropriate name using LinkedIn as to somebody who's the IT director. I can then go from the IT director to find some random target within the organization. I can phish. In this case, the example is spear phishing, which is, of course, the spear phishing itself is somewhat difficult to, because it looks like a very real email. However, we can help block the attack once it's happened. In this case, it is sending a link that go here to do your password. There's actually a link to download the malware. And this could very well be how WannaCry first got into somebody's system. Somewhere very easily. Have some kind of phishing. It could have just been a generic phishing email. It could have been a targeted phishing email. Went to a link. They followed the link. They got infected. Once I'm infected, now it's on. So in this example, the slide deck here, it's a manual attack. I'm doing everything manually. Some of these steps with something like WannaCry, and I'm sure future variants can do something similar, they're going to automate the spread. So once I'm in, I've gotten onto the user system and I can exfiltrate their identity and credentials. I can get their creds out. So now I have a backdoor, I have a tunnel through the firewall, I have a backdoor on somebody's desktop. I can now log in to other systems from their desktop and compromise the data. You know, I can get my password, I can get user ID, I can start getting access to the systems that my compromised user has access to. And I can start pulling information from those systems that I can use to leverage further attacks. I can use to make money, I can sell things, I can steal their information and use that. Depends on what my target is. That's, you know, that final step. Let's say I've grabbed the information. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go a little bit deeper. In this case, I'm manually adding, I'm compromising web application. So the scary thing here is if I compromise web application, your customers, when they're trying to use the web app, they're ending up getting stuff stolen. Their creds are being stolen. I don't even need to log in. You know, I'm not stealing it out of your web application. I'm getting them to give it to me. I drop other APT tools in there that let me come back in, let me attack from the back end, which is something I talked about earlier here. The obfuscation step is where I'm hiding all of this traffic. And there's a lot of different ways to hide it. You know, I can set things up so that I exfiltrate the data slowly to avoid if they've got IDS or if they've got any kind of SIEM system installed, I can avoid that. Small shops often aren't going to have anything that sophisticated. They're a small shop. They don't have the dedicated resources. You guys may be monitoring it for them, which is great. But as an attacker, I have ways to avoid that. One of the things I actually did years ago is I did a penetration test against a network operations center, security operations center, to see how much data I could exfiltrate before they noticed anything. And I'm not going to say who my target was, but I will say that they bought me a lot of coffee afterward because I won that one kind of hands down. And it's fairly easy to do from an attacker's perspective because there's so much information, so much data flowing. It's fairly easy to hide these little bits and pieces of it if you're doing it right. And a lot of attackers out there actually have kind of an idea of how to do this. So my final step here is damage, deface, or steal. In this case, you know, it's typically stealing. The WannaCry ransomware was pure theft, nothing more. People were going ahead and getting their files encrypted and giving the bad guys money. How easy is that from an attacker perspective? But if you're if one of your customers is a research house or has other information they want to keep that's important to them, that may be valuable to one of their competitors, that may be valuable for any one of a number of reasons, that data itself has a value. And again, damaging, if I mess up your website and you're a small shop, I can damage your reputation. And that's something that can hurt. There's a value there as well. I grab the information I want. I exfiltrate it to my attacker, and my attacker can now do with it whatever he really wants, and now he's a happy attacker. He's got what he wants, and he's still got a backdoor into your system. Right, one of the things I glossed over is that I could have installed ransomware on another user in the organization and made it look like it came from outside, even though it was from internal. I can do it over and over again if I want to. Cloud side, I'm not going to go into a lot of depth on the cloud here, but one of the things with the cloud, a lot of companies, a lot of organizations move to the cloud. They've moved their email to the cloud. You know, Office 365 is hugely popular. G Suite from Google, also very popular. And we offer protection for that. And a lot of people go, oh, I'm in the cloud has defenses. Well, it doesn't. The cloud has defenses in place. This is very true. Cloud providers do it. Microsoft Azure did a great job. Amazon with AWS done a great job. Google Cloud, Rackspace, they all do a really great job of defending their own infrastructure. They're not doing anything actively to protect you. Their end users, the defenses for your end users are up to you. So the end users have to be ones to handle that. Okay, they're the ones, they provide protection for the cloud. You have to provide protection in the cloud. And I'm sure some of you provide that to your user base. So what have you learned so far? Didn't go into a lot of depth on it, but there are a lot of threats out there. The threats are the actual attacks, the ransomware, the malware itself, the backdoors. Those are the actual threats. The vectors are how they get into your system, whether it's something as simple as a web drive-by, which we've seen many of. You know, there's a lot of hostile websites out there. You jump to it, and there's even been occasions when advertising, you know, a little flash ad popped up, and the flash ad was bad. Now, most of the providers, Microsoft, Google, et cetera, are great at blocking those from happening. They appear as soon as they realize they've got it. It's gone within minutes. But those are the vectors. Email being a very, very common vector, the one we talk about a lot. That's Barracuda's forte. And then finally, the attack surfaces. What is my attacker going against? What vectors are they using to try to hit something? And in many cases, it's the users. When you're talking about, you know, web surfing and email, that's typically a user target. They're going after the user to try to get them to do something that they shouldn't be doing. So how can we help you? And let me go over that a little bit. We take a three-step approach to this. We look at the idea of detect, which is understand what's already in the environment. And we've got a couple of tools to do that. Prevention side, how do we stop attacks from getting into your network, getting onto your customers' workstations, your laptops, et Prevention side, and then recovery. Because, you know, even the best defenses sometimes get breached. Right? There's nothing to stop an attacker for leaving a thumb drive out. I've actually used this attack myself. I used this in the company president giving their big presentation and left it someplace where it wouldn't be unreasonable to leave it. It sure had that video, but it also had attacks on it. As soon as somebody dropped it in their laptop, I owned their laptop. Thumb drive can do the same thing with thumb drive, put autoplay on it or have a PDF in there that's something interesting, relevant. They pick the PDF, they read it, and they're compromised. So they get inside, it gets attacked, files are damaged and lost. How do you recover from that? And that's where we come into play with the Echo platform and Barracuda backup. So on the detection side, we have a couple of tools. We have primarily looking at the email threat scanner. It's a free online scanning tool, and the guys will give you all the links later that you can use to scan your customer's email clients or email service, and it will look and see if there's any latent threats already in there. There's actually a version of this that's coming out for Exchange. If any of you have customers who are in a hybrid environment or are managing their Exchange servers for them, there's a version that does it for on-premises Exchange. Prevention side. So we offer the Barracuda Essentials product, which is actually a comprehensive suite see if it's good. If it's good, they go right to the website. If it's not good, they come up to a warning page that says, hey, this is a problem. There's integrated end user training for it. And it handles things like, I don't go into much depth here, but we're talking about the homograph. This is one that I find particularly fascinating, is that different character sets have characters that look the same. If you can see it, look carefully on your screen there, the P, an example, isn't a P. It's different characters from a different character set. So very easy for somebody to miss. You're glancing at this looks like the correct website, and they go to the wrong spot, and they have it compromised. We actually can protect against that. We have the next-gen firewall. Next-gen firewall is available in hardware, software, online. You can get it in the cloud. Provides a full network, comprehensive network firewall, application control, user intelligence. It's actually user-aware, application-aware, all centrally managed. And then advanced threat protection. This is a reasonably new addition. And what ATP does is ATP leverages a huge amount of information to stop zero-day attacks. Actually, I'm going to view this a little, perhaps something important about it a little bit later. But what it is a multi-layered defense system that relies on fingerprints that we can acquire from many locations, various series of analysis layers that it goes through, and then finally a CPU emulated sandbox that can catch these kind of attack, any kind of attack. Catch it. It will catch something like WannaCry. It would catch Locky. It caught Locky back when Locky was around. And then it's fed. It uses machine learning, which is basically take a bunch of stuff, look at it, and figure out what's going on by it. I'm not going to go into any real depth on machine learning. I'm sure most of you are familiar with it. But it does all threat vectors. And you may notice a number of things here. We actually, well, you're not all using the entire suite. The entire suite of Barracuda products feeds ATP. So ATP has a massive, massive install base and multiple vector analysis coming in from all sorts of different locations. It's coming in through the web, it's coming in through email, etc. So it gives us a tremendous amount of flexibility and real-time knowledge coming into ATP. It's a very effective system, and it's layered. And part of the reason we get the layers is that first stage where we look at it and go, have we seen this before? Is this something common? No problem. Within a second or less, we know we've seen this before, and we don't need to worry about it. We can block it and go from there. We have other stages that go in there that I don't really talk about, but here we talk about the high performance CPU emulation sandbox. There are a lot of different ways to do sandboxing. The first ways people saw were using virtual machines. The thing with VMs is it's very easy to identify a VM. And there's a fair amount of malware out there that's actually been written in such a way that it looks at it and says, am I running on a VM? If I'm running on a VM, I'm going to behave differently. A CPU emulated sandbox, on the other hand, isn't a virtual machine. As far as the software that's running can tell, it's a real system. So it will behave as if it's on a real system. And that's one of our advantages. So we get multiple vectors coming in. I'm talking about machine learning. Then we get the multiple vectors coming in, so we see what's good, we see what's bad, we see how the threat landscape is evolving, we see how the attackers are changing the techniques they're using and evolving, and we adapt to that using machine learning, which is something that's really, really cool. Now, we stop WannaCry. We actually stop this at the static analysis layer, which is before it even gets to the sandbox. Static analysis is we basically literally tear the code apart, use relatives of debugging tools, really. And we tear the code apart. We look at what was going on inside the code, how it was assembled, what kind of function call it's doing, what it's going to do. And we caught it. Never even made it to the sandbox before we were able to catch it. So anyone who was a Barracuda customer who had advanced threat protection active, they were protected from WannaCry. Any of your customers who you can get this to, they'll be protected from it. And they should be protected from pretty much any of the new variants that are inevitably going to be coming out in the very near future. The advanced protection, you can see here, this is just a little bit of a graph showing a huge spike. almost 7,500% increase from 113,000 blocks to 1.3 million blocks on the 11th. Huge increase in traffic. And that was BATP in general. It wasn't all specifically WannaCry, but that, I'm sure, is a fairly large chunk of that being distributed outbound. Because that was a huge blitz when they put that out. So finally, I'm going to jump into recovery. Recovery, we offer the Barracuda backup, which is part of Essentials, and then the Echo platform, which you're all familiar with, Tronus's platform. And it's a cloud integrated solution. It protects your environment, does backups, keeps them off-site so they're safe and should not be deleted. And if there is an attack and somebody does get ransomware on their system, you can recover from backup. It's there available. It's available in software and appliance only. You can go either way if you want to, or cloud-based. It's a full comprehensive solution. We offer protection for any user on your network, even mobile users, for any application they're using, on any platform. If they're a cloud environment, we offer protection for any cloud, and we offer protection coming in from any of the threat vectors. And there are many of them out there. So that's all I have for now. I'm going to go ahead and hand this back. Sarah, Lindsay, whoever's taking it back from me, I give it to you.
Thanks, Mike. That was very informative. I don't know about you, Neil, but I learned a lot from that material.
That was pretty crazy, and Mike did a great job of kind of illustrating. Yeah, I mean, it was WannaCry, but it was also ransomware in general. I mean, that spike that happened on the 11th and the top, I mean, that's crazy. I mean, when you see like data like that, but that's the advantage of the Barracuda with the advanced threat protection. I mean, we are globally monitoring all the devices that we protect, and we can see that type of information, so it's fantastic. You know, as you and I were talking, as we were listening to Mike, taking notes, one of the things we talked about was the email threat scan. And usually when I present the email threat scan, I usually use that as a lead gen tool for partners because there is no cost for that. A partner can go to the email threat scan links. We have them, whether in Tronus on the MSP solution side or on the Barracuda side, you can go to that link and really scan one of your customers' Office 365 environments for any of those latent threats that exist in there. And a lot of times someone will say, hey, I've got a security solution, I'm good. And I'm like, why don't you just try that threat scan and see what happens? And they try it and they're like, oh, that's pretty cool. So it does find threats. You can remediate it, you know, you can get rid of those threats that are sitting there. So really a great way to kind of start having that conversation with your customers on security. And as I started this whole presentation with, you know, making sure we're keeping it top of mind with customers, the security landscape and the security threats that can really affect their business. So with that, I think you've got some great tips that we can offer some partners, and even an example of what a partner did this week for their customers. So I'm excited to see what you got. So with that, I'll hand it back to you, and we'll see what we can learn here.
All right, sounds good. Yes, yeah, it was intense. So that the little chart that showing where the spike on the 11th was pretty intense, and I think intense is how I feel about this image that you guys are all seeing on your screen too. It's a pretty picture, but now that you're all familiar with the threat itself, let's talk about let's talk about you. And for me, this guy, this surfer on the screen right now, he's you. Okay, he's faced with something really big. It's challenging and it's inevitable. It's going one way or another for him. Okay, and he's going to do one of two things. He's going to commit right now to catching this wave, to taking advantage of the industry momentum that already exists, and he's going to enjoy all the good stuff that comes along with it, okay, because it's happening one way or another. Or he's going to hesitate, and he's going to miss out on that ride altogether. This is one of the easiest marketing opportunities you'll ever be presented with. In marketing, one of the biggest challenges is in creating awareness. In this case, you don't have to worry about that because it's all been done for you. There are over 1.8 million news articles in Google, and that was from as of a search this morning. I'm sure there are more by now. So right now you could pick up the phone, you could call every prospect, every customer you have access to and ask them, have you heard about WannaCry? And you're going to have a productive conversation no matter what. So what are you going to do? There's a bit of a no-brainer approach that you can take here, and that's to be helpful and available to your customers. Really, as their trusted advisor, you want to also be educational proactively. There's a couple things that you need to do first. These are no-brainers, okay? You've got to equip your team first with the knowledge that they need and make sure that they're able to answer the questions that are coming in from your customers and prospects. And you want to enable them to proactively start those conversations. So make sure that your team has access to the information that they need, and whether it's sharing a recording of this webinar or just using the resources that are available to you, that's number one. You also want to make sure that they're prepared for inbounds and make sure that you've got somebody available as close to around the clock when something like this happens as possible, because you're going to get calls all times a day from your customers when something goes wrong. Another urgent action, of course, is to check in on your customers and make sure that, if they were impacted, that you're acting on it right away, and if they're vulnerable somehow, that you're taking care of it. So whether that means patching a threat or turning a computer off, that you're acting right now. You also want to communicate to them. So if you can't reach out and call everyone right away, you want to make sure you've got something on your website. If you've got a blog, you want to put something up there. Send out an alert or a newsletter, and just make sure that your customers can look at you and say, you know what, this person is my trusted advisor. They know what's going on. I feel good in this person's hands. So those are the fundamental pieces. But if you want to go big, there's a lot of opportunity here for you to do that. Your prospects and customers are paying attention right now, and we definitely suggest this approach. So maybe you're going to put together a specific email campaign that you can generate engagement with. You can pull together a list of prospects and customers to call and check in on to make sure that they're faring okay with all of what's going on, and of course to have that broader security conversation outside of the WannaCry threat. You can think about hosting an event or a webinar or putting together some special offers to incentivize action on their part. And we actually have a really good example of this that I wanted to highlight. This came from one of our partners, Oxen Technology, and they actually sent out a few proactive pieces this week. This was actually the second of the emails that they sent out, because the first one was sent out just right away as an alert saying, hey, you know what, you guys are protected, you're all set. But they also came back and really capitalized on the opportunity. So you can see they offered several promotional offers, such as a free network risk assessment, a free security awareness training. They also offered a free guide to ransomware for small businesses. And actually, that was a great use of the partner toolkit material that Intronis MSP Solutions produces. So that was a rebrandable piece. They went ahead and took advantage of that. And also, just inviting them to have a conversation, asking their customers and prospects to reach out to them if they have questions or if there's anything that they could do to help them prepare for these kinds of threats. And there's a lot more content in there too, but I wanted to call that out because I thought it was a shining example of an MSP taking an opportunity, being proactive about it, and being creative about the offers that they are that they're making. Another thing you can do is consider making training sessions available. And if you need inspiration for what topics to focus on during those training sessions, you can take a look at some of this material. This came from a CompTIA study based on what businesses say that they need training in. But you can see from the slide, password practices are right up there. Risk management, types of attacks, threat analytics, these are all areas where you can, strike a chord with your customers. And if you can't host a training for every employee at every customer account, try training the trainer. Talk to the person who's in charge there and letting it trickle down from there. Or just do the widespread communications. Again, do a webinar, host a web-based training session. These people are waiting for it, so capitalize on it now. And since we know you're busy, we do everything we can here at Intronis MSP Solutions to make it easy for you to go outbound with this kind of marketing. We actually have some SMB Facing Tools that you can use today, whether or not you're an Intronis partner, and these are available on our website. They include interactive online quizzes and surveys that you can run through with your customers and help them have a conversation around, what their habits are, where their knowledge stacks up against their peers, and where it might be lacking, and kind of help expose some vulnerabilities in just at their own accounts, and it gives you an opportunity to discuss best practices with them. We also have SMB facing content such as ebooks, so you can go ahead and download those and share those out whether or not you're an Intronus partner. And for our Intronus partners, we actually have an additional layer. Partners on the line will know that we have a pretty extensive partner toolkit and lots of materials that are fully rebrandable for you to go ahead and use. So, for example, we have pre-built event packages for you that include presentations you can use, email invitation templates, event planning checklists, collateral that you can rebrand it and give out on site, and you can actually adapt that. So if you can't host a lunch and learn or you know, an in-person event, you can actually just go ahead and make it a webinar.
It's actually pretty cool, Lindsay. So one of my favorites is actually the phishing quiz, and I like to go fishing with the end users because you know, you go in there and you start looking at the PayPal links that we use within the phishing quiz, and it's tricky. You know, it's not as obvious as you think. Obviously, you know, if someone's behind, you know, Barracuda Essentials or something, it's going to catch it and it's going to do all this magic. But if they're not behind, you know, an email protection suite and they get an email like this, you know, just training them on how to deal with it. You know, a lot of users are so, I'll just click the link and see what happens. And, you know, that first training that you get is don't click the link, right? Like, take a look at it. And it's a really good way, just a refresh for some of the end users that you work with on how easy it is to kind of slip one of these bad links by them. But the phishing quiz is great. I've actually used it you know, I present to some end users with some partners, and I was able to take the content and just use it without much modification. So I love that phishing quiz. If anyone on the phone or on the webinar wants to play with it, I mean, it's awesome.
Yeah, it is
cool.
Great. Thanks,
Sure.
for that, Neil. And you know, we do have MSP facing versions of these as well. So what we typically do, you may have even filled one out yourself, is you can take it as an MSP to see where you stack up. And like Neil said, they are pretty tricky. So you might think that you're doing better than you really are. So we, you know, definitely advise you to take advantage of those tools and to share the end user facing ones with your prospects and customers. We also have rebrandable emails. We've got a whole suite of them. I just put a couple examples up, but those are easy for you to modify. Slap your logo on them, put your contact information in, and customize the content as you like. But we try to make it as easy as possible for you. And these are just a few examples of resources at your disposal to help you take advantage of the opportunity. All right, so let's wrap up. I think the first point I would make is that this is not a one-off. There's more of this coming, and it may be worse. Okay, so there are variants up there of these kinds of attacks that will even attack backups, for example. And that's where technology like the multi-layered security comes in. It's important to be proactively looking into solutions and offering that type of protection. You can't protect against everything. You can't stop things from happening, but you can take advantage of the defenses that are available to you. You can also get your team up to speed and so that they're ready to field incoming calls and to proactively kick off those conversations. See if you can get ahead of these events, because if you're addressing this on the ongoing, you know, basis, it puts you in a much better position to get those solutions in the hands of the end users that really need them. And you don't have, you know, like I said, you don't have control over what happens, but you have control over how you react to it. So our advice to you is to seize the opportunity now, because next week there might be unrelated news and that audience you had today could be engaged in something else. So this is right now, this is up top of mind for everyone, and we encourage you to have those conversations while you have a captive audience. So if you do nothing else, this is what I would, this is what and I think what my co-panelists would say you do.
Yes, Lindsay, and of course you run partner marketing, so of course we have to agree with you. But yes, you know, obviously with your experience doing partner marketing, as long as you have, you know, marketers don't get these opportunities as often as we would like. So, you know, all the marketing people are, you know, drooling at this. And if you're not doing it as their IT provider, I can guarantee you that somebody else is actually doing it. So, you know, seize the opportunity. It might as well be you versus your competitor down the street.
That's right. All right, so before we move on to any questions, I did want to point your attention to one piece of the content that's one of the favorites among partners, and that's the Smarter MSPs Guide to Ransomware. And as I mentioned in one of the previous slides, there is an SMB version of this as well. So there's a link where you can download this today. You know, if you have questions about any of the other resources that we showed or about the solutions that we talked about in terms of, you know, the backable appliance, the essentials products for email security, the next-gen firewall, go ahead, reach out to us at the contact information that's on the screen, and we can help you out. All right. let's take a look at the questions panel.
I think if I look at some of the questions, a lot of them I can probably bucket a little bit, Lindsay, so I can probably answer a few all in one shot. So one of the questions had to do like what's included in Barracuda Essentials versus what's not included within Barracuda Essentials. And obviously our sales team's pretty good. We will follow up with that information, but you can always point your favorite web browser to intronis.com. There's a product section there from the downloads, and it'll show you exactly what's included within the Essentials package. And there's a specific question on Exchange versus not Exchange, but all of that information's up there. If not, please obviously let us know. There's also some questions on very technical information as far as does it infect it, how does WannaCry operate? If you want to send us an email into the support side, we'll do our best to get those answered for you. We'll obviously follow up from the sales side, but you'll definitely want to do that on the support side. We won't take time in this webinar to do some of those very detailed questions, but we can probably usher them to the right location. There's also, some philosophical questions on, who's hacking the hackers, and one day I'm sure it's realistic, and I'm sure our governments are doing something that they haven't told us. But there's definitely some questions there, and some resources, at least in the partner marketing toolkit, that may be useful for your customers and be able to answer some of those questions. If there are any other questions, I'll pause for 15 seconds, and we'll see if they come in. And Mike, I don't know if there's any final thought that you want to add, or any questions that you've gotten. You've been doing kind of a whirlwind tour on WannaCry for the last week or so, doing multiple webinars. So there may be a question that came up on another webinar that might be applicable to this audience, and be more than happy to kind of give you some time to kind of go through that.
Thanks, Neil. I don't have anything to add at the moment, but one of the things you talked about questions, and if there's any other technical stuff, you want to loop me in on any of these answers, I'd be more than happy to help you guys out answering your Intronis customers.
Awesome. I appreciate that, Mike. Thank you so much. And, there was definitely some questions that have just come in too, and they're great on, us versus competitors and the retention of backups and stuff. And, we actually have some very extensive retention for how far back you can go with recovery. So, you asked that question, whoever asked that, we'll follow up with the answer to that, and we can absolutely help you there. We surpassed that vendor for sure. And we will also provide a follow-up to everyone that's attended today, and even everyone that registered for the webinar, with a link so that you can watch the replay. And as Lindsay had said, send this to your technicians, and they can watch it over the weekend, or they can watch it when they get some time next week if they weren't able to attend today. Again, we understand that with managed services, sometimes it's like firefighting, and you got to go to that next fire. So we do record all these webinars, and again, you will get a survey at the end of this webinar. We love feedback, good, bad, indifferent. Your feedback makes us better. So if there's a topic or a discussion you want us to talk about, or even have feedback on this webinar directly, we'd be more than happy to take it.
All right. Thanks, Neil. So I think we've pretty much covered, we've covered a lot of the questions. I'm sure that questions will continue to come in over the next couple of days, and we're ready to field those as they do. And I just want to thank you, Neil, and you, Mike, for joining us today, for sharing this knowledge, helping us get this conversation going. And thank you to to all the partners and others that have joined us today as well. Again, like Neil said, we'll be sending out a link with the recording, and that post-event survey will pop up shortly, right after we close down the presentation. We look forward to seeing you on our upcoming webinars, and have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.